وكان عندنا مشكل ديال الواد الحار والماء ما كانش عندنا، والضوء 3 سنين حنا عايشين بلا الضوء بلا واد الحار بلا الماء، لما حنين الماء كنسكيو جابوا لنا الضوء. سمعنا كيقولوا غادي هاد الدوابر غيدخلوا لهم الماء، ولكن كذبنا. وبقينا كنقولوا كنسولوا شي كيسول شي، واش بصح الماء غادي يجي هنا؟ حتى فعلا جا نيت الماء بصح.
The population patterns in the world are changing, and people are moving freely between rural and urban communities. So the big challenge is, how do we expand access to basic services?
What we see typically is that you have major cities booming with economic development, at the outskirts of which poor people coming typically from rural areas accumulate. They are usually poorer than the ones already established, yet to extend services to them, they would have to pay relatively more because they are further from the existing network and because the cost of connection is linked to the actual cost of extending service.
The urban poor and rural poor are not benefiting from delivery of infrastructure and social services. The actual cost of providing these services to poor households can be prohibitively high. If you look at the traditional approach of financing, what the World Bank has been doing, but also other IFIs, the emphasis has been on financing large infrastructure projects, whether it's a water treatment plant or a power plant, a school, hospital. So the focus is very much on the hardware, and then the thinking is that somehow households who would like those services will be connected to these services.
The main reason poor people are not receiving the services is that they don't have the ability to pay for the service. The connection might be too expensive. For the service provider, financially might not make sense because it costs a lot of money.
The realization that many private sector companies were not connecting poor households made the development community sit up and say, hey, we've missed something. One way of fixing the problem was to provide subsidies to private sector companies to connect poor households.
We're trying to fill an investment gap where you have a service provider in one hand, being a public or a private entity, trying to provide a basic service, water, energy, sanitation, health, to poor people who are not able to afford the cost of receiving that service. Output-based aid, OBA, is a results-based financing mechanism, which is really a performance-based subsidy. The service provider is performing the service to certain standards, is taking the pre-financing risk, and then after we verify that the poor people have received the service at the indicators and standards we have required, the subsidy will be paid to them as a form of reimbursement to their cost.
Output-based aid is a new paradigm for targeting a low-income population in providing services to them. This is a major change from the traditional way we used to do things, where we used to pay for inputs. Under output-based aid, we target outputs. We pay the contractors, we pay the service delivery provider when the job is done. So we see the results, we see the connections, and we see the benefits before payments are made.
Having independent verification of the service, water in taps, electricity in homes, paved roads, is an important part of that approach. So it provides incentives for private providers. For government, it allows them to test the reliability and the quality of the service, so they can see that the subsidies they paid to get the service to the poor are delivering outputs.
OBA can be applied both in infrastructure as well as in social sectors. It can be applied to energy, water, sanitation, irrigation, solid waste management, urban transport, ICT, health, and education. With output-based aid, you're guaranteeing that results will happen. You can target your beneficiaries, and then for the donors, it's a very powerful tool because they're able to know with the aid they're providing to developing countries what is the value for money and what is the effect that it's doing in the countries. The Global Partnership on Output-Based Aid, GPOBA, was created in 2003 to disseminate output-based aid, to see if it's a better way to push development aid into developing countries. Originally, when we started, the idea was to help design OBA. We are now celebrating 10 years of history of OBA within GPOBA. We have been expanded in our mandate, and we not only do technical assistance, but we also do dissemination of OBA lessons learned, as well as we provide subsidies in the form of OBA.
In the peri-urban areas of major cities in Morocco, a number of people coming sometimes from the center of the city, sometimes from rural areas, accumulated into informal settlements. You had people living in dire conditions without any access to water supply or sanitation. Facing that challenge, the government of Morocco asked each and every service provider to come up with a plan to extend these services into these areas. 3 operators came together to approach GPOBA to help them fund their service extension.
Donc on a déposé un dossier qui consiste à alimenter en eau potable et raccorder au réseau d'assainissement un certain nombre de quartiers qui n'ont pas la possibilité financière pour accéder à ces services de base.
Everybody recognizes the project and the pilot approach to be a very good success. 10,500 connections to water supply were established, and about 9,500 connections to sanitation were established with the 7 million grant that was provided as part of the output-based approach.
أي دار أول ما بعد دخل واحد دار هي الأولى هنا في الزنقة الأولى، عرفتي شنو نقول؟ درنا فيها زردة. درنا فيها الزردة وخدينا سطورة ديال الماء مروا بيني من اللي دار، وبدينا كنرشوا في الناس ونرشوا في الزناقي ونغوتوا بالفرحة ديال الماء اللي وصلت لنا.
In Colombia, prior to the families having natural gas connections, they were mainly relying on firewood. That had a serious effect on their health because there was a lot of smoke inhalation, particularly bad for children and babies. The government was already making sure that the lowest strata of the population were being given reduced or subsidized rates for consumption of gas. The problem was that the connection to that gas network was very expensive. GPOBA was subsidizing about $140. The remaining amount was provided to the customers through a loan program that lasted 6 years. Well, the project was very successful. We aimed to do 35,000 connections. In the end, we did about 98%. We used an independent verification agent that actually physically went to the properties and made sure that the connection was there.
Aquí conmigo viven 8 personas. Ninguno trabaja. Y la que trabaja soy yo. Yo hago mis sopas, sé cocer. Con eso yo pago mi gas, pago la luz y el agua. Voy a tener un año de poner el gas y un año que yo no he quedado mal con el gas, siempre lo he pagado.
people cannot live without water. And in Kenya, absolute coverage is very, very low. We had these rural communities where there were users that were willing to pay for the service, but the government just didn't have any institutional mechanisms on how to expand services. The users did not really have any credit worthiness, so none of the banks or any lending institutions actually knew what kind of borrowers these users could be. GPOBA was really able to help us meet this gap. We were able to group a set of community water supply projects that was big enough for a commercial bank to be interested. KREP Bank financed 35 community user systems, which served about 135,000 people. Because of the upfront financing required, community preferences are absolutely taken into account, not only where they want these schemes to be located, but based on the demand from the community users themselves.
The output-based subsidy served a very, very important role in helping KREP to enter the sector and also to understand how to structure financial products for financing community-based water projects, availing water to low-income and poor communities.
We used to fetch water with the hand. We had to go several times, and it was very tiresome. This is where I store my water. I have enough water to run my family and my animals.
GPOBA supports access to basic services all over the developing world. In Mongolia, GPOBA provided one-time subsidies to private operators to expand telephone and internet services in the least densely populated country in the world. Around 20,000 herders now benefit from public access telephone services, and 22,000 district center residents have access to wireless-based telephone and internet services. GPOBA supported a reproductive health voucher scheme in rural Uganda, which led to 66,000 safe deliveries and 32,000 couples receiving STD treatments. The scheme is now being replicated with the Ministry of Health to reach other districts. In rural Bangladesh, GPOBA provides subsidies to partner organizations for procuring and installing solar home systems. Over 2.4 million people in remote areas are now using solar energy, which has increased economic activity, enabled students to study at night, and helped communities feel safer after dark. GPOBA subsidized healthcare services at a new public-private partnership hospital and 3 filter clinics in Lesotho. Over 800,000 patients have received quality medical services at all of the facilities combined. In Vietnam, GPOBA funded a tuition project to enable 8,100 low-income students to attend secondary schools. 85% of them have successfully passed their first term. GPOBA partnered with the government of Honduras to establish an OBA facility to finance water and sanitation projects throughout the country, reaching 88,000 poor people. And in the war-stricken country of Liberia, GPOBA is providing subsidies to the National Public Power Company for connecting low-income households to the electricity grid. So far, 30,000 people have received access to electricity.
The exciting thing about output-based aid is that you can really track results on the ground. More and more now in development finance, this has become the accepted way of operating. You still need to build water treatment plants, and you still need to build power plants, but you're looking ahead and say, okay, fine, you have more power plants, but are people actually getting the service delivered? And so that focus now, I think, is pretty much in every development practitioner's mind.
In an ideal world, you would like to have the big infrastructure and then the add-on of OBA providing that basic service to the last mile to the poor people. The future for GPOBA is very promising. We will be seeing more a scale-up of projects because we have obtained a lot of expertise over the last 10 years.
GPOBA has been a leader in output-based aid financing of access to infrastructure and social services for the poor since 2003. And GPOBA's results have also been used by the World Bank to mainstream that approach.
Going forward, for us, it's very important to be able to partner with other development partners, including our donors, to start exchanging the lessons we have learned. Our focus is on our vision that one day GPOBA will be a center of expertise worldwide.
The way GPOBA functions is that it's put the seed for an idea. It's breaking the mold of the way we're used to do things, demonstrating the fact that you can target the poor with subsidies and you should pay for results rather than for promises and inputs. This is a model that should be replicated, that should be expanded. And once the texts hold, I think this is the way to do it in the future.